Hi, I'm Katerina. You're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So things continue to go from bad to worse for Triller ever since they won that $6 million purse bid to host this fight between Teofimo Lopez and George Kambosos. So once again, just to get you guys caught up, the fight was originally scheduled in June, and Teofimo Lopez, he pulled the COVID card. So then the plan was to push the fight to August 14th. Now Triller has decided to push the fight to October 17th, and host the fight in Australia, where the fight would generate a lot more buzz, since we know that the tickets were not selling when the fight was hosted in the States. The last 2 weeks of the fight, Triller actually discounted the tickets to like 60 or 70% off the original price, and the tickets still weren't selling. This is when coincidentally, Triller pulled the plug, or I should say, they pulled the COVID card, right? And after they announced that they were canceling that fight for that date, TMT's Leonard Ellerbe, who was responding to Triller trying to diss Floyd Mayweather because Floyd forced them to push their original date to host the fight, they dissed Floyd Mayweather, and in return, Leonard Ellerbe, he reveals the fact that they had to drop the tickets down to, like I told you, about 60 to 70% of the original price. Now, he said this before they canceled the fight. After they canceled the fight for that date, Leonard Ellerbe, he came out and said, I have proof. I have actual proof that the tickets were not selling at all, right? This is the reason why Triller now wants to host this fight in Australia. It's really ironic when you think about the fact that it was Teo that sold himself so well to Triller that they bought everything Teo was telling them. Teo convinced Triller that he's the next biggest star in the sport of boxing. If you put me on pay-per-view, I'm going to sell at least 2 million pay-per-view buys. He's telling the boxing world, and of course Triller, all of this. They're buying it, right? Now, you fast forward to present day, it turns out Triller has already lost over $5 million betting on Teofimo. Remember, they spent $6 million just to win the purse bid to host this fight, right? So while they bet on Teofimo to bring in the crowd, to bring in the money, now they actually have to rely on George Kambosos to bring in the money, to cut some of their losses by hosting a fight in Australia in an arena that's going to hold at least 30,000 fans. At least the capacity is that because of COVID. But guess what? Just when you thought losing $5 million was bad, things may actually be getting even worse for Triller, because Teofimo is now talking about pulling out of the fight and vacating the IBF belt if the fight is hosted in Australia. According to his manager, McWater, they don't want the fight to be hosted in Australia. They don't want to have to deal with the 2-week quarantine, trying to make weight. At least this is the excuse that Teofimo's manager is making. Matter of fact, let me quote exactly what Teofimo's manager said about this situation. He said, quote, I don't think we will have to give up the title. I think that if they move the fight that far back, the IBF will rule. And then, guys, here comes the but. He continues and he says, but fine, if we have to, we'll give up the title. And he, meaning George Kambosos, can fight the number 2 IBF contender, Isaac Cruz, somewhere for $70,000. End quote. Talk about adding insult to injury. Triller done already lost $5 million. Now Teofimo and his people, they're talking about pulling out of this fight, to where then it's a total loss for Triller. That means they lose the money that they invested when it comes to bidding on this fight, on top of the $5 million that they've already lost. And I'm sure it adds up to even more money than that. But let's just say for now, it's over $10 million. Does Teofimo really think he's going to be able to pull out of this fight completely, drop the belt, without getting sued by Triller? Listen, man, This puts Teofimo and Triller in a really bad spot, but I think it puts Teo in an even worse spot. I mean, this is the self-proclaimed undisputed. I mean, he uses that as his nickname now. In old media, they love calling him Mr. Undisputed, right? Even though we know he only has 3 belts. Now you're threatening to give up the belt so you can get out of this fight? I mean, it's so crazy because Teofimo, he was hell-bent on fighting Kambosos instead of fighting against Devin Haney, right? And now he's talking about possibly vacating the belt. Now, regardless if this is just a bluff or whatever, clearly, by listening to Teofimo's manager, they're serious about this. At least they're serious when they say they don't want the fight in Australia because they don't want to do quarantine 2 weeks before the fight, trying to make weight. But here's an idea though. If you're worried about that, why don't you just show up in Australia earlier? Hell, you could show up a month before or even 2 months, have your whole training camp in Australia. Like Rocky Balboa did when he fought against Ivan Drago in Russia, right? I mean, that's a small problem that could be resolved. But something else that's ironic is originally, that's where they wanted this fight to be. Remember? Originally, they were talking about, oh man, it's going to be in Australia. Who would turn that down? 50,000 fans in the arena, et cetera, et cetera. Now they're saying if the fight is in Australia, we're going to vacate the belt. I don't know what's going on with Teofimo Lopez. I mean, I know Bob Arum, he wants to make the Lomachenko fight. He wanted to make it sometime around December or whatever. And I think they're kind of pushing for that fight. But it would just be a crazy move if Teofimo, he vacates his belt to not fight George Kambosos and then moves on and fights someone else. Maybe he's thinking, well, if I fight, Lomachenko again, maybe people won't care about the fact that I didn't fight Kambosos and I gave up my belt. He's probably thinking, you know what, man, it don't matter if I give up this belt. Old media, they're still going to call me undisputed. They're going to call me undisputed even if I only have 1 belt. And I bet you he actually really believes that because that's how they've been treating him. Once again, people like Max Kellerman, Chris Mannix, they know this man only has 3 belts, but they still call him undisputed. So we'll see what happens in this situation. But man, I mean, things are deteriorating really, really fast when it comes to his relationship with Triller, right? I mean, he got into it with Bob Arum over this whole fight because Bob never wanted the Kambosos fight. Or at least he didn't want to put too much money in this fight because he knew it was not a good investment. And it turned out Bob Arum was right. Because now Triller has already lost $5 million and they're on the verge of losing over $10 million messing with Teofimo. Now, don't get me wrong. This fight may actually still happen because once again, Teo, he stands to lose a lot. If he vacates the IBF belt, he stands to lose a lot. So I could still see this fight possibly happening, but things are getting really rough for Teo. I mean, I was like the only person telling you guys since day one. Since this fight was signed, I had always told you guys I felt that Kambosos is a dark horse. I felt that he has a very good chance of pulling off the upset. And all the fans said, you must be crazy. This man don't have a chance. But after people seeing Teofimo pulling out of the fight and all this other stuff that doesn't really make sense, then I started to see a whole lot of people say, I think Kambosos was about to beat him. And he knows it. This is what I'm hearing a lot of fans say or seeing comments. Listen, man, from here on, guys, it is a tough road for Teofimo. If he fights Kambosos, that's a tough fight for him. If he fights Lomachenko in a rematch, that's a tough fight for him. If he fights against Josh Taylor, I think Josh Taylor wins that fight. I won't even say a tough fight. I think Josh Taylor wins that fight. If he fights Devin Haney, which he most likely won't, I see Devin winning that fight. I see Tank beating him. The only person I see Teofimo really having a chance of beating is someone like a Jojo Diaz or a Ryan Garcia. And those are 50-50 fights. So we'll see what happens, man. I'm really looking forward to seeing what decision gets made when it comes to this situation. Is he going to vacate the belt? Is he going to go ahead and fight against Kambosos in Australia? We'll see soon, guys. That's all I got for now, and I'm on to the next one. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo de Key Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodekey.com. Like them on Facebook and follow them on Instagram.
Hello, my name is Dominic. I just got my procedure done here at South Carolinas. I was recommended by Dante's Boxing Nation, and it's real. You know, here's the results. The brother out here, Brother Enoch, is real, and it's a very, very, very good recommendation. I recommend it. 4 hours, you in, you out, and it's the rest of your life.
So if anyone in the world wants this hookup, make sure you contact my man Enoch at 704-499-3471, and make sure to follow him on Instagram.